At 2 a.m., the smartphone placed by the bedside starts ringing. Glancing at the screen, the name Nancy, my daughter, lights up. Wondering why she's calling at this hour, I hurriedly pick up the phone. "Hello, Nancy?" However, the caller turns out to be my granddaughter Amy, not my daughter Nancy.
"Grandma, Mom is crying. Help!"
She pleads desperately, her voice trembling, on the verge of tears. "Where's Dad?" I inquire.
"Dad hit Mom and left."
Amy replies. Shocked and without understanding, I quickly change and jump into the car. Entering the living room, I found Nancy sitting on the floor, crying. Amy, who had been trying hard to hold back her tears on the phone, now has a red nose and swollen eyes as she opens the door.
"It's nothing serious,"
Nancy says, her cheeks swollen and red. "What happened?" I ask.
"Well, actually."
As I listen to Nancy's story, I feel my heart sink. Embracing the crying Amy, I gently stroke her head and quietly utter. "Next, it'll be Jason," collapsing onto the floor in tears. "My name is Carla, and I'm 57 years old. 2 years ago, I lost my husband, and now I live alone. My joys include visiting my daughter and her husband, who live about a 30-minute drive away, and watching my 4-year-old granddaughter Amy grow. I also engage in stock trading, a hobby my late husband taught me. As I trade stocks, I often find myself consulting with him in my mind, wondering if it's time to sell or if I should wait a bit longer. It's strange, but I feel like I hear his advice, saying,
"Let's hold on a bit longer."
Or,
"It's time now."
And oddly enough, following his words has often proven profitable. My daughter Nancy is 29 years old. She got married 5 years ago, and after Amy was born, she became a full-time homemaker. Her husband Jason works as a salesperson who visits houses individually. I used to think salespeople were high-earning elites, but it seems Jason's income isn't that great. Nancy has been doing freelance writing from home since last year. They live in a rented detached house, so the rent is quite high. However, balancing childcare, household chores, and her writing job is challenging, and it seems she hasn't seen much success. Jason doesn't compromise on anything regarding household matters. If things aren't tidy, he criticizes, and he doesn't allow shortcuts in cooking, so Nancy can't even use pre-made meals. Being consumed by household chores and cooking, she mentioned that despite her efforts, she barely earns $300 a month working from home. That's why I support my daughter's family financially every month. It's money I've earned from my hobby anyway. If it helps my dear daughter and granddaughter, I'm fine with it. I believe men have their pride, so I've advised Nancy to keep quiet about it regarding Jason. Jason's job seems both low-paying and demanding. Whenever I visit, he quickly returns to work after chatting with Nancy upstairs, often just taking a shower and rushing out immediately. Being a salesperson seems tough, Jason, I remarked once.
"I need to prepare documents for the houses I'll be visiting tomorrow. It's part of the job,"
he replied without complaint, showing his dedication.
"I'm sorry for leaving so soon while you're here. I'll be back,"
he said as he left again in his suit. Watching him leave, I sighed. I hope he doesn't wear himself out. Nancy chuckled at my words, but I could sense some dissatisfaction in her expression. Peering at her face, I teased, "Are you sulking because he didn't eat the meal you made?"
"Huh? No, it's not that."
Nancy replied, reluctantly. "It's understandable. It's his job. I reassured her.
I know.
Nancy reluctantly responded, her demeanor showing hesitation. Both Mom and Dad are busy, so if you feel lonely, just call Grandma. This picture with Amy is Grandma. I explained, teaching my icon to Amy and setting up to contact from Nancy's phone. I showed her how to make calls multiple times, ensuring she could do it on her own. I never imagined that teaching her would unexpectedly prove useful in a different way. At 2 a.m., my phone rang by my bedside. Half asleep, I fumbled for it, wondering who could be calling at this hour. When I checked the screen, Nancy's name was glowing. Worried that something might be wrong, I hurriedly answered the call. Hello, Nancy? But it wasn't my daughter Nancy on the line. It was Amy.
Grandma, Mommy is crying. Help us.
Amy said, her voice trembling, desperate to convey the message. Confused, I asked, "Where's Daddy?" Amy replied,
Daddy hit Mommy and left.
What? I thought I misheard. He hit her? Daddy hit Mommy? Amy confirmed. Can I talk to Mommy?
No, Mom, no matter what I say, she won't respond.
I hurriedly changed and jumped into the car. When I arrived home and pressed the intercom, Amy opened the front door for me. Amy, who had been desperately holding back her tears on the phone, now had a red nose and eyes from crying. I'm sure she was extremely anxious during the 30 minutes before I arrived. Where's Mom?
Over there.
I patted Amy's head, indicating the living room, and took off my shoes. As I walked down the hallway, Amy followed me, sobbing. In the living room, Nancy was sitting on the floor, crying. Her disheveled hair, covering her face with one hand as she cried, made me and Amy both uneasy. Nancy, what happened? I shook her shoulders forcefully, and Nancy looked up, startled.
Mom?
She muttered in a bewildered tone, not understanding why I was there. Where did he hit you? Show me. I unwrapped Nancy's hand. The area she had been covering was red and swollen. Nancy gasped, and covered it again with her hand.
It was just a slap, nothing serious.
Her voice trembled as she said so. I couldn't believe it was nothing serious. Even if it was a marital dispute, I couldn't believe he would hit her so hard. What happened? I dabbed Nancy's cheek with a wet towel.
Actually, I couldn't tell Mom until now. But it seems like Jason is cheating.
Cheating?
Yes. The other day, he said he was going back to work, but he asked me for money. Why would he need tens of thousands of dollars to go back to work?
I don't know, but just suspecting cheating because of that.
The other day, when Jason wasn't home, I looked through his bag and found a lighter with a hotel's name on it. It's not a hotel for staying alone. It's the kind of hotel a man goes to with a woman. He's asked for money from you several times before. So today, I refused.
And then he hit you?
Yes. But he even tried to hit Amy, who was trying to stop him. I desperately intervened, and in the end, he took money from my wallet and left.
Listening to Nancy's story, I felt my heart chilling.
What shocked me the most was that Jason tried to hit Amy. I kept thinking if I could continue living with such a person.
Amy tightly grasped my sleeve, perhaps recalling that moment. She whimpered and burst into tears. I felt unforgiving. Of course, cheating was unacceptable, but raising a hand to family was despicable, and I trembled with anger. Fathers are supposed to protect their families. I wanted to shout. But lecturing wouldn't damage him. If he had any remorse, it would have happened when Nancy spoke up or when he attempted to strike our daughter. Embracing the crying Amy, gently stroking her head, I quietly uttered, "Next time collapsing on the floor in tears will be Jason's turn."
Huh?
I smiled and nodded reassuringly at Nancy's anxious gaze. "Just live with Jason a little longer. It'll be okay. I'll live with you too," I added and continued. "We'll buy a voice recorder to record all conversations with Jason."
But if he demands money, he might hit Amy again.
"Record it when he demands money too. You can give him the money, that's fine. Keep Amy always with me. I'm worried about you, but we also need evidence," I explained.
As long as Amy is safe, I'll be okay,"
nodded Nancy with a mother's resolve, and I captured her face with my smartphone. "Even your swollen cheek will be evidence." The next day, I barged into Nancy's house with my belongings in tow. "It seems Nancy isn't feeling well. I'll stay with you for a while to take care of the house and Amy," I stated. Jason was taken aback by my sudden visit, wearing an apologetic expression.
"Oh, you really shouldn't be inconvenienced. I'll help with the house and Amy."
His amiability was fitting for a salesman, indeed.
"Amy tends to run around, and it would be exhausting for you."
His concern for me truly made him seem kind-hearted. "That's all right. What worries me more is whether Jason will be satisfied with the lunchbox I make. It's a secret from Nancy, but if you aren't full, you can buy something with this," I whispered as I discreetly handed Jason $200.
"Oh, I feel really bad about this."
Scratching his head, Jason pocketed the money despite his words. With this, he couldn't oppose my decision to stay here anymore. From that day on, I made sure to spend all my time with Amy whenever Jason returned home, even joining her in the bath. While being cautious not to let Amy overheat, I made sure we stayed in the bath for at least an hour. This was to allow Jason to talk to Nancy without being wary of my presence. "Thanks, we're done," Jason would say when we exited the bath.
"Well, I guess it's my turn now."
He'd say with a smile. "Take your time," I'd reply. While appearing friendly with Jason on the surface, as soon as he entered the bathroom, I turned to Nancy for confirmation. "Did he say anything?" I asked.
He did. He seemed puzzled because Mom suddenly decided to live with us.
Nancy replied with a chuckle.
When he asked if I had said anything, I told him about yesterday when he hit me. He went silent, so I said, "Surely I can't say that."
"And what did he say?"
Then he threatened, "Shut up, or I'll hit you again." He dug his own grave without realizing he was being recorded.
Seeing Nancy laugh eased my worries. She seemed like a different person from the one I saw last night. I hoped that my presence would be a source of encouragement. We nodded in agreement, knowing we had taken the first step. On the evening of the next day, while Jason was taking a bath, what we did was to check his line messages. It was to find out if he was cheating, but to our dismay, Jason seemed to have relationships with multiple people.
Even with children, how could he do this?
Nancy muttered, disgust evident in her voice. With so many women he was cheating with, no amount of money would ever be enough.
"Wanna meet up? Let's go to that hotel again. Yesterday was amazing."
These were the messages included in the chat. Slowly scrolling, we recorded Jason's phone along with the conversation.
Wait a minute. Does this mean?
Nancy paused, staring at the screen intently. The chat contained these words.
"Next week, come over to my place again. Mr. Salesman."
With last week's date. Ending with a heart emoji, Nancy frowned in discomfort.
He even got involved with clients?
Disgusted and speechless, we looked up at the ceiling, sighing deeply. The next day, we went to consult with a lawyer. Mr. Smith, the lawyer, listened carefully to our story. He explained that a video recording of line chat alone wasn't solid evidence. He suggested that if we had photos of the two entering and leaving the hotel receipts, credit card statements, and so forth, it would be helpful. This one with the date last week. I paused the video we were watching together and pointed to the words.
Next week, come over to our place again. Mr. Salesman.
Spoken by a woman.
Next week means this week, right? We might still be in time.
We immediately decided to hire a private investigator and requested an investigation, including Jason's actions during work, how much time he spent at clients' homes, and so on. 3 days later, we received a call from the detective. After reviewing the investigation report, we nodded with satisfaction. It's fantastic. Please continue. We told the detective. Having obtained evidence of infidelity, we proceeded with plans to set a trap for Jason at home. I withdrew a portion of the money I earned from stocks, $50,000 from the bank, and placed it in the dresser on the second floor of Nancy's house. It was located in the bedroom where I was staying overnight in their house. The dresser was nearly empty already. While Jason was working during the day, we had been gradually moving clothes and personal belongings to my house so we could move out anytime. Since the drawers were empty, the money would stand out conspicuously. The neatly bundled bills of $10,000 each would surely catch Jason's eye. I gave Jason $200 the other day. How long do you think that will last? I asked, and Nancy responded, tilting her head.
It varies depending on the situation. But if he thinks Mom has money, he might spend it all soon.
That would be a good timing then. We gently closed the drawer containing the $50,000. That night, as usual, I was about to take a bath with Amy when my phone rang. It was Nancy calling. I had asked Nancy to call me if Jason demanded money. I told Amy to wait for a moment and quietly made my way upstairs, carefully listening outside the bedroom where I stayed overnight.
More money? What on earth are you using it for?
Shut up. Your mother can hear you. Just give it to me quietly. Or else.
What? Are you going to hit me again?
If you don't want to get hit, give me the money quickly. What's taking so long?
Nancy sighed and I heard the drawer opening.
Here, $500.
What's wrong with you? Giving me such a big amount.
As I heard the sound of the drawer closing, I slid open the sliding door. Sorry, Nancy, Jason. I was going to take a bath but suddenly felt dizzy. Can I lay down for a bit?
Huh? Are you okay, Mom?
Nancy immediately prepared the bed, and I lay down. Even Jason, with no room for a polite smile, muttered something and left the room. When I heard Jason leaving from the front door a while later, I got up from the bed. We need to hurry. We left Nancy's house with the money from the dresser and our belongings packed. The next day, Jason received a call from lawyer Smith. We scheduled a meeting with Smith present to discuss divorce arrangements. Then, I made a call to Jason's workplace, informing them that I had an important matter to discuss as Jason's mother-in-law. I asked to speak with the manager and relayed the message, requesting them to keep it confidential until the meeting. With that, everything was set in motion. On the day of the discussion, Jason visited my house. I had instructed Amy not to come downstairs. Jason, without greeting me, sat abruptly across from Nancy, not bothering to conceal his dissatisfaction. Lawyer Smith greeted and handed over his business card, to which Jason mumbled and nodded in response.
So? You want a divorce? What are your demands?
Jason turned to Nancy and bluntly stated,
Yes, I do. I want a divorce. And I also want alimony and child support.
Nancy replied.
What? Are you kidding me? You just left the house out of the blue wanting a divorce and now you demand alimony and child support? Mr. Smith, the inconvenience is on my side.
Jason banged the table, glared at Nancy, and looked troubled at Mr. Smith.
I have evidence of your infidelity. And evidence of domestic violence.
Nancy placed photos of Jason and another woman leaving a hotel taken by a detective on the table. Then I showed a photo from my phone of Nancy's swollen cheek and played a voice recording where Jason admitted to being violent.
Disgusting. Did you deceive me? Recording even such conversations secretly. Huh.
Jason raised his voice and tried to grab Nancy's collar, but Mr. Smith and I intervened.
Please calm down. Acting too aggressively could get you in trouble.
Mr. Smith retorted sharply. Jason reluctantly complied with Mr. Smith's firm words and settled back down.
I intend to hear both sides as much as possible. However, if this mediated divorce fails, Nancy seems inclined toward divorce mediation or litigation. She seems well prepared with evidence and doesn't seem willing to back down.
Smith subtly urges Jason to relent. Jason, who had been silent in thought, suddenly exclaimed.
But even if it's a divorce because of my infidelity, I still have the right to property division, right?
Smith responds.
That's correct. If Mr. Jason claims it.
Jason triumphantly declares.
Then I'll claim it. Tough luck, Nancy. I don't have any property left, so hand over half of yours.
Nancy calmly retorts.
I don't have any either.
Jason, taken aback, stares at Nancy for a moment before she repeats.
I have no property at all.
Jason, shocked, accuses.
Don't lie. There was $50,000 in the drawer.
I explained. Oh, that was mine.
My mom has been supporting us monthly. The money you received was also from my mother's assistance.
With a horrified expression, Jason exclaims, Jason, what? Nancy continues. If you and Nancy divorce, I won't have any reason to support you. In fact, I whisper to Jason. I'm filled with the desire to sue for assaulting my precious daughter. Jason pales. Unfortunately, it seems the shock of not receiving money hits her harder than my words. But we do not intend to end it with this. And with that, Nancy laid out several more photos on the table. They were pictures of Jason making sales visits, depicted visiting a single house.
You spent an hour and a half at this house. Is it usual for sales visits to take that long? What were you doing inside?
Jason chuckled at Nancy's words.
Well, sales visits involve explaining the product and various things. It can take a while. Sometimes there are questions.
I see.
Nancy chuckled faintly as she placed more photos down.
Do you have to strip down to your underwear for product demonstrations? Sounds tough. What kind of explanation is that?
There, a photo showed Jason standing shirtless by a window. He must think they can't be seen much through the lace curtains. Even through the lace curtains, the woman embracing Jason in her underwear was clearly recognizable.
There's more.
Nancy placed an A4-sized paper on the table and showed Jason, his voice choked with disgust.
I've had a detective continuing the investigation all along. It's a list of your cheating partners. If I compare this with your company's client list, you'll see just how many clients you've been involved with.
Jason was already speechless. At that moment, I rose from my seat at the sound of the doorbell. "What a perfect timing," I said. To my words, Jason exclaimed,
"No way."
As I opened the door and courteously expressed gratitude, Jason gasped when he saw the person I ushered into the living room.
"Boss."
Jason exclaimed, collapsing onto the floor, clutching the photos and lists on the table to his stomach.
"I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll pay compensation, child support, and anything. Please forgive me."
Jason pleaded. Nancy and I exchanged glances and sighed. "How unfortunate," I said.
You're too late. We've already prepared duplicates of everything,
Nancy added. We placed the photos and lists in front of the boss. As the boss looked through them in disbelief, Jason's cries echoed through the room. Naturally, Jason was fired. Furthermore, he's being sued by the company and by the husbands of his clients. Apparently, the clients' wives turned them back on him.
I was tempted.
I was coerced.
And made Jason the sole villain. It's his own fault, I believe. Of course, Nancy shows no mercy. She's demanding compensation and child support through Mr. Smith. Unable to pay everything he has been owed and even his rent, Jason was evicted from his home. Come to think of it, Nancy mentioned seeing him doing road work, a job he's not used to. He looked like he was about to cry as he was yelled at by younger colleagues. As for us, we are happily living together in my house, the three of us. Nancy has started working outside the home. While I take care of Amy, I don't feel any burden at all. On the contrary, every day feels fulfilling. Even though we live together, Amy still occasionally calls from Nancy's phone.
I love you, Grandma.
Hearing her lively voice fills me with happiness.
You must not go home. Because
in the hospital room just after giving birth, my 4-year-old niece, who came to visit, appealed while looking at the baby. Actually, my niece has a mysterious power and can read the hearts of people and animals, they say. Did you hear something again? Asked my sister who came with us. Then she nodded while glancing at the baby. Is it possible that it's a warning from my baby? And when I heard my niece's next words, my body froze, and I came to know a terrifying truth that made me tremble. I, who had been a magazine model, met Henry, an actor 5 years older than me, and got married 3 years ago. At that time, people looked at us with a critical eye, saying that it was unusual for a prestigious actor to marry a model. However, Henry declared during a television wedding announcement,
I will definitely make her happy.
And my father, who was the president, enthusiastically supported his work. Even my mother-in-law stood in front of the media actively and said, there is no other wonderful bride like her, protecting me. In fact, since my father's company was profitable, we generously supported Henry's family, who were entertainers. My father was particularly fond of my husband and supported Henry from behind with a large amount of money. Eventually, the criticism from society subsided, and we enjoyed a happy married life for a while. However, just 6 months after the registration, my father suddenly became ill and passed away. I couldn't show him his grandchild's face, seeing me depressed. My father-in-law kindly said,
Take your time to rest.
After that, my father's company went out of business, and my sister and I were busy cleaning up. Naturally, our home couldn't financially support my husband as it used to. But, now it's my turn to support Henry firmly with my skills. I overcame the sadness of losing my father and renewed my determination. However, after the procedures for closing my father's company were completed, my mother-in-law and husband changed their attitude completely. If you can't provide money, at least give birth to an heir quickly.
I chose the wrong wife even though there were other good women.
My mother-in-law started to treat me harshly, and my husband hardly came home anymore. Could it be that my marriage to Henry was because of my father's support? I felt a slight unease, but since he was from a distinguished family, having an heir was certainly an important issue. I thought it was natural to be asked for such a thing, so I started managing my health and going to the clinic for fertility treatment. And, thanks to my efforts, I soon became pregnant with a boy. My mother-in-law and husband were overjoyed. Maybe now I've fulfilled my responsibilities as a wife, I felt relieved that I was able to meet my mother-in-law's expectations, and I thought we could return to our previous relationship with my husband, unaware of the terrifying plan they had in mind. After that, I safely gave birth to a boy.
Now the succession problem is solved.
Really, if it had been a girl, I wouldn't be able to look at her. Although I felt a little uneasy about their words, seeing them so excited made me happy too. Both my mother-in-law and husband came to visit the hospital room many times and said, "Hurry up and bring the grandson home." Thankful for their anticipation, I thought my child would be happy too. Seeing my son, who was accepted by the family, made me very happy. And between visits from my mother-in-law and Henry, my sister and 4-year-old niece Noah also came to visit me.
Congratulations, Auntie.
Niece, who earnestly conveyed her congratulations like lines from a school performance. My sister laughed beside her and said, "She practiced saying it many times last night." Noah ran up with a smile and peeked at the face of the baby I was holding. However, the next moment, she looked puzzled, tilted her head, and whispered to the baby,
"The baby must not go home."
With a solemn expression, my niece explained that it was a message from the baby. Actually, Noah has a mysterious power and seems to hear the voices of people and animals' hearts.
The dog says its leg hurts.
It's a story I heard from my sister before, but one day, Noah pointed to the front leg of a neighborhood dog. Worried, the owner immediately took it to the animal hospital, and it turned out that the dog had a broken bone, as Noah had said. Because it didn't show any signs of pain, no one noticed it.
Because the dog told me.
At that time, Noah explained like that and surprised everyone. My sister also says, "I think it's just a coincidence if it happens once, but it's strange because it happens so many times." Moreover, when a plumber who came to the house said there was a water leak, Noah displayed her mysterious power again.
This person is not from a plumbing company. There is no water leak. Liars are bad.
The visitor who was surprised by Noah's shouting from behind my sister immediately ran away. I heard. Surprised to see that, my sister immediately called the plumbing company. Then, they said,
"The problem has not been reported. It might be a fake pretending to be our plumber, which has been increasing recently."
This incident led to the arrest of the fraudster. Since Noah declared that the baby must not go home that day and showed her mysterious power, I couldn't ignore it. You can't ignore what Noah says. My sister and I exchanged glances and decided to listen to the story in detail.
If the baby goes home, Auntie won't be able to see him anymore.
I widened my eyes at Noah's unexpected words. And the story didn't end there. After that, Noah began to talk about something that made my body freeze. What? What does that mean? After listening to everything, I trembled with anger and made a determination for the sake of my beloved son. From that day on, to confirm whether Noah's story was actually happening, I started gathering information. I listened to stories from my father's friends that had same hobbies who came to visit, looked at my father's notebook that my sister brought, and made phone calls to acquaintances. My mother-in-law and husband came to the hospital room without prior notice, so I was worried whether I could gather evidence properly, but somehow managed to handle it well. As a result, sadly, I found out that all of Noah's words were true. And finally, on the day of discharge, I was hospitalized for a slightly longer period of 10 days due to severe postpartum anemia. But I was burning with fighting spirit to protect my child. Oh my, finally discharged? You shouldn't just laze around here forever.
It's just anemia, you're making a big deal out of it. Try harder with more determination.
My mother-in-law and husband entered the room noisily complaining. Henry, without paying attention to me, tried to pick up the baby and leave, and just as he reached out his hand towards me, I shook off my husband's hand with a snap. Don't touch my son. I won't go home. I'm going to divorce you. Both my mother-in-law and husband were taken aback by the suddenness of it all. You know, if I go home like this, the child will be taken away from me, and I'll be kicked out, right? The two looked at each other and laughed as if mocking me. Henry pretended to be clueless, but I immediately played the recorded audio I had. This child is needed as a successor, but we don't need a wife who won't be a cash cow. And following, my husband in the audio also said,
Let's harass her as much as possible and kick her out of the house.
Laughing.
What's this? When did you record this?
This is the conversation you had when I wasn't in the room. Actually, on the day when my niece revealed the plan of my mother-in-law and husband to drive me out, I thought, could it be? But my sister suggested, you might be able to record some indiscreet remarks. So I installed a bug in the private hospital room. Then, I recorded voices of them discussing how to drive me out. You said you'd use my room as a warehouse in the backyard.
Ha! What are you talking about? Ha ha ha.
There's no need to pretend. You're going to lock it up, aren't you? All those conversations are recorded too. Confronted with unexpected evidence, my mother-in-law and husband started sweating profusely. I don't want this. There's no way you're serious, right?
Yeah, finally the successor was born, and I was just excited. I got carried away and said things I didn't mean.
Although the two of them desperately tried to cover it up, such lies wouldn't work. Ah, that's right. So, you have wealthy fans, but I heard you are going to marry one of their daughters next? This was also a story I heard from Noah. She mentioned the existence of another woman as well.
A new mommy is coming.
Noah hinted at the presence of another woman for Henry. Hearing my niece's words, I was shocked to the point of collapsing. Indeed, in the world of actors, influential fans often play a significant role, and they may even meddle in the actors' marriages. Surely, someone approached them, and my mother-in-law and husband were trying to discard me, a woman without money, and switch to another wealthy daughter.
If a boy is born to the next mommy, they won't need this baby either.
With a sad expression, Noah looked down. Remembering that day, I said, I know everything. And I glared at the two of them. My mother-in-law and husband, unaware of my niece's mysterious ability, were momentarily surprised but soon became defiant. Oh, It must be hormonal imbalance after childbirth causing delusions.
Seriously, stop talking nonsense.
I was utterly disgusted by the two of them who refused to acknowledge their scheming. So I made a phone call. As the dial tone rang and the call connected, a woman's voice came from the speaker of my smartphone.
What are you doing?
As my husband tilted his head in confusion, the woman said, "Henry, I'm sorry. I have feelings for someone else. The marriage proposal was pushed forward by our parents. I can't marry you." And she rejected my husband. In fact, as I listened to my niece's story and gathered information, my father's friends told me that there were discussions about marriage around my husband. Moreover, the woman I was informed about turned out to be my friend. Her parents were also theater enthusiasts, members of the fan club, and close friends with my father. Since the parents were close, naturally, we, the daughters, became close too, and now we are best friends. I immediately called her in surprise, but even my friend said, "I had no idea," and was astonished. When my friend questioned her parents with a fierce expression, it was revealed that her mother had been proceeding without permission. Changing your mind so suddenly?
Doesn't it seem fishy?
Despite being thrown into turmoil by the sudden turn of events, the two blamed my friend on the other end of the phone. Their desperation to not lose their cash cow was plain to see. What are you saying? Who's the one being suspicious here? Isn't it strange to prepare for the next marriage without even getting divorced? When I confronted them with reason, the two of them made bitter faces and clicked their tongues. "Oh, you're such a troublesome girl. Do you really think someone without connections can survive in this industry?"
You need money for showbiz. Poor people who don't understand that should keep quiet.
Cornered, my mother-in-law and husband lashed out. It's no use trying to silence me with force. As I stared back at them with a strong gaze, the sound of the hospital room door opening echoed.
Well, well. The world of theater has become quite filthy, hasn't it?
Suddenly appearing was my father-in-law. My mother-in-law and Henry, who they thought that he was in the countryside for a park visit, widened their eyes. They tried to hide behind each other, pushing and shoving. Just 3 days ago, I consulted with my father-in-law about the results of my investigation, and as expected, he hadn't been informed about anything. My father-in-law was furious and, in between his speeches,
For the sake of my precious daughter-in-law.
he came to support me.
Hey, you two, she and her father, have been supporting us for a long time, haven't they? Is it all about money in the end? There's no loyalty or gratitude.
My father-in-law glared at the two of them. Seeing their intensity, the two trembled and shrank back in silence. I don't want to be separated from my child. I'm getting a divorce. As I pleaded tearfully, my father-in-law nodded.
Yeah. I don't intend to let someone like this succeed me. Henry, you're no longer my disciple.
Ha! Dad, why are you suddenly saying this?
Surprised by the sudden declaration, my bewildered husband started to panic. No way. Both me and Henry were doing this for the future of the theater world. Despite wailing, my mother-in-law clung desperately, but my father-in-law pushed her away and yelled.
Thinking that doing such horrible things would benefit the theater world is a big mistake. There are plenty of excellent actors who can succeed without being inhumane. Actors don't need monsters.
I will raise my child with words of love, not words of contempt.
That's right.
And with that, My father-in-law took my hand boldly, and we left the hospital room with the baby. Panicked by being abandoned, the two clung to me, but it was too late. Wait, I'll apologize.
It's my fault. There's no one else for me but you.
However, such superficial apologies would never reach my ears. What you loved was ultimately not the theater but money. Before I knew it, a single tear was streaming down my cheek. Thinking of my father, who had earnestly supported my husband for the future of the theater, I couldn't help but feel bitter. We'll never meet again. Goodbye. I said this to the dumbfounded pair. Then, holding my son, I left the hospital room with my father-in-law. After that, indeed, the two were kicked out of the house. I received $20,000 in compensation, divorced Henry, and he and my mother-in-law retreated from the glamorous stage. Recently, their shabby appearance was captured by paparazzi and became fodder for tabloid shows. Meanwhile, I resumed my job as a model. My magazine column, where I talked about parenting in a down-to-earth manner, became very popular. My father-in-law still visits my son often. Adored by the child, my father-in-law is also affectionate. He's now the heartthrob of our household. How was today's story? Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet in the next